and your patience with me. But today we have some fantastic panelists and some really great questions around security in today's landscape. We're just going to do some quick intros here. So I'd love to start with Zach, who's one of my favorite people, all three of these. And we'll go through and then we'll get into it.
Sure. Hi guys. I'm Zach Lain. I work at PepsiCo. I run our global center of excellence where we pilot, embed, and scale new data, new solutions, new platforms, just cool stuff into the ecosystem, cross-brand, cross-market.
Hey, I'm Mark Kapczynski. I run the Commerce Media Network at REMAX. For folks who don't know who REMAX is, we sell houses for a living, and now are progressing into the digital space in terms of consumer and client interaction. So we're a franchise business historically, right, and always took care of agents. And so now, as we build out the Commerce Media Network, it's how do we interact with all the visitors that we have with our website, and how are the interactions that we can start to have with brands and partners that ultimately support people who are buying and selling homes.
And I'm Lance Dobson. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing and Data at Shed, the largest of the three brands here, obviously. Shed is a little startup that sells GLP-1s and other kind of lifestyle medications. So we sell Ozempic, we sell compounded versions of Ozempic. We've been doing that for about 3 years now. It's been kind of a wild ride doing that with the Hims, Hers, and Ro.co's of the world. So we're trying to create the most complete wellness journey for everyone in the space as much as possible, and trying to incorporate that in data-driven ways is kind of our next big mission right now.
Great, thank you all. And Lance and I have a private meeting later because, I'll be on that journey as well very shortly.
Employee discount, baby.
But today, we're really focused on security because we've talked a lot about AI. We've talked a lot about how we're going to move forward in that landscape. But today I really wanted to focus on how we're balancing privacy and performance to kind of future-proof ourselves moving forward. So in order to do that, I'd love to hear Zach's opinion and Zach's strategies to kind of help future-proof what your data infrastructure looks like, and then we can chime in as well.
Yeah, sure. I think at PepsiCo we're making, I'd say, 3 big bets. They're kind of all in flight, so kind of maybe next year we can circle back and see the progress we made on them. I think firstly, it's a word I'm hearing creeping up more and more. I think it'll be the ad exchanger word of 2026 probably, but it's composability. I feel like we've been kind of composable from the start, right? We separated our tech stack into identity, compute, consent, so we're able to swap vendors in and out. I don't want to say it's frictionless, but with a lot less friction, when an ID graph changes or when we have to change clean rooms due to XYZ, we're able to move that a little bit easier. Secondly, not the sexiest topic, but building policy as code. A lot of the vendors we work with, a lot of the platforms we work with, very rightfully so, put restrictions on how we use the data. It can be used in this geo, can't be used here. It can be used to enrich this audience, but you can't use it to enrich your first-party CTV audiences, right? So we've built these processes, we've built these limitations into our cloud environments that, I don't want to say it's perfect, but it's helping us spot when we may be straying a little bit further from what its intended purpose. And I think kind of lastly, very much in my wheelhouse, is this idea of reusable templates, reusable frameworks. My job is basically to herd the cats, and the cats are Cheetos and Mountain Dew, and they never want to listen. So it's like, man, this is why I'm not a cat person. But it's like, it's not rocket science, but aligning audience and measurement frameworks around things like, reach and frequency. It's not groundbreaking, but what is groundbreaking is having all of our brands do it around the world. PepsiCo is basically a giant holding company, so having a one way of understanding actually is quite a revolutionary topic for us. So I think, Cam, to your point about, these are some of these strategies that we help to definitely safeguard our infrastructure, but certainly optimize it for going forward.
Yeah, so I think our point of view stems with starting with first-party data. Everyone obviously here knows about it, thinks about it, has a plan around it, but it's really how do you maximize it and leverage it to your advantage? And it starts with really having a plan around it. And so for us, our journey starts with, we have home buyers and home sellers, and we want to know everything about them through that entire journey. And we have a long sales cycle too, right? People don't just like go to a website and buy a house, right? They shop, they talk to an agent, they put a bid in, they go through escrow, they start to plan their move, they actually then move into the house and have to live in it, and then it cycles all back around. And so for us, it's really understanding that entire customer journey and making sure that we have the first-party data that supports every one of those steps. And it's actually hard, right? Because you get a fraction of data from the people that visit your website, you get a fraction of data from the agents, you get a fraction of data from how the transaction's gonna occur, you get a fraction of data from the move, and then once they're living. So it's how do you envision capturing all these little pieces of data, and then do you have the mechanisms in place where you can stitch it together so you can then tell a complete story? And even if you can tell that complete story, it's only going to be for a small population of your entire customer base or user base or visitor base to your site. And so for us, it's then how do we expand that audience, and who are the partners that we can rely on that can help us take those little pieces, pull it together, and then further stretch it out so that we can actually have meaningful scale. I think figuring out that whole flow and the technology and the data coordination across all of that so our data can then be usable by ourselves and our partners is really the trickiest part to dealing with all this.
I think we have a different challenge at Shed because we're incredibly small still, and I think it applies in some ways, but in a little bit different. I think that the challenge is adoption internally, if that makes sense, because we have admittedly a very young team, and that means that we don't quite have the river polishing the data stones, so to speak, right? I think that there's value in just a lot of different eyeballs, a lot of different people touching the data that live in the data tables, seeing them, molding them, shaping them, critiquing them, asking for more, that gives it more utility. And so for us, it's been much more about giving access, but in careful ways, because the more access we give, the more risk that we introduce to the systems. And so I do think that there's kind of a challenge there, introducing people, making them more data literate. I think that with AI, there's not really much of an excuse for people to not be data literate because they can get into the data tables, they can learn how to do a little basic SQL, get access, where a lot of people wouldn't have been of the mind to be able to do that before. But again, that introduces the challenge of introducing risk as more people get their hands on it. It's really easy to go drop a data set or something like that out to the general Slack channel to everybody, but then all of a sudden you're exposing it to someone in the call center who maybe has connections to other companies, and they're leaking out little bits of data to other companies, which introduces privacy risk, and especially in our industry where there's where it's healthcare related, there's HIPAA compliance issues, right? And so I think that can be the challenge regardless of where you are, is as much data literacy, as much exposure, but also being super mindful of who is touching those data so that you're not introducing that type of risk.
Sure, absolutely. So we mentioned very briefly through some of your perfect answers, by the way, well done, the clean rooms that we were talking about. And Mark, I know you have a particular affinity for them. So my question for you is, how do clean rooms kind of fit into your privacy and data goals?
Yeah, so I'll first say we've onboarded all of our data now into LiveRamp, and so we've created whether you like LiveRamp or not, they are a utility. So we've onboarded all of our data there so that at least now we have accessibility, right? We can perform clean room functions. And I think it builds off of what I was saying about first-party data, which is, you're never going to have 100% coverage of your audience, right? Of all the people visiting your site, there's still so much anonymity there that you have to do everything you possibly can with the first-party data that you actually have. And so I think the clean room environment makes it easy for people to combine data sets. And I'm big on, if you keep hearing from me, combining data together doesn't just mean within your own company, right? It's across partners because you guys have some data that might be interesting for us, and you guys might have some, and so it's incumbent upon us to put ourselves and our data in an environment that makes it easy for us to collaborate on that data level, where we can actually learn real facts about our audience, our users, our consumers, and so on.
Mark, that's like a great answer. That's kind of like what I was going to say too. I think like PepsiCo has really been on this data clean room journey about 5 years or so. We really leaned into Habu, now LiveRamp. We've done a lot of test and learns with the InfoSum team, now Group M, WP Media. And I really started a little bit basic. We're just doing some simple overlaps, trying to understand white space, trying to understand how our consumers intersect a little bit. But now it's certainly, it's been blood, sweat, and tears, I'll tell you that. But it's more of a robust tool. I think all parties would be, dare I say, proud, but I think would be proud of, we are doing measurement inside clean rooms. We are understanding lapsed buyers in more granular ways. We are IDing under-delivering segments. We're just setting more realistic expectations with our brands themselves. So where clean rooms are such a valuable tool in our toolkit, where we can now understand, how do our own consumers intersect with music data or sports data or other types of ways of understanding our consumer. It's led to some kind of unique insights. Has anyone eaten gazpacho in the last 90 days? Okay, well, Mark, this is for you then. It's that you are statistically over-indexing with Mug, our root beer brand, which sounds disgusting. So I don't know, root beer and cold Spanish soup, not great. But that little one aside, I'm not really sure what to do with that little insight. But these types of insights are totally and 100% engendered by the clean room. And I think, this data journey we have been on from kind of low level sophistication to really unlocking things we couldn't do before also really nicely dovetails with this privacy journey, right? They go hand in hand, right? We are focusing on data minimization as a North Star. We are holding things for fewer retention, like we have lower retention time. We have fewer copies of data. All of these guardrails, totally made possible by the clean room, certainly go hand in hand with our data journey.
Fantastic. And I would ask that all food-related questions go here first.
That's fair. That's fair.
Thank you. I can't answer them more accurately. Well, Lance, Shed has been doing some honestly pretty incredible things, and coming up with the GLP-1 movement, it's becoming more and more accessible for everybody, right? So as you grow, and as you grow with your new role and everything, how do you build effective data partnerships?
Carefully, kindly. I think that the healthcare space probably is the second or third most difficult, behind maybe fintech and the finance industry in terms of regulation, privacy, things like that. And so it's a challenge to have as many conversations with attorneys as we do to get them to agree to partnerships like that. And that's really the primary challenge, especially within the GLP-1 space, where I don't know how much everyone watches what's in the news, but everything going on with Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly, and the litigation that's happening with patents and in the FDA and the shortages. But any of those types of things that happen make anyone, but attorneys especially, quite a bit more reticent to be more forthcoming with partnerships like that. And so I think that's where it really just becomes about being hyper-transparent with the internal stakeholders, with the partners that you're working with, and saying, here is everything insofar as I'm able to show you, and then really letting them interrogate your process, everything that you're bringing to the table there. And that all sounds kind of ambiguous, but that's really the process that it has to be. It's been very iterative. Even in previous roles, I've been in the healthcare space for about 10 years. Between this, I've done things with CPAP, I've done things with contact lenses, and it's kind of all the same in that way, in that you just have to become super buddies with the legal team and show them everything that you're working on, show them that you're competent, and unfortunately they're playing in the most risk. I mean, in a previous world, our company was under FTC litigation, and it just makes everybody super flinchy. And so if they feel like they know your process, if they feel like you're only bullshitting them 50% instead of 75%, and that if you say a thing that you understand the certainty or the lack of certainty with which that may or may not be true, then I think that allows that to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much complexity here, and I think you have to think of this, definitely as a marathon. This isn't a sprint where, hey, we can just like spend a few months and get it all done. You have to really have a vision for where you want to take your first-party data, what makes sense in terms of collecting data from other partners or combining data from other partners. And it's a journey because, like, to your point, it's going to just take so much time to get through legal, get through all the hurdles of the clean room and the technology there. You just have to have that faith that at the end you will have valuable data about who your consumers are and what they're really doing, that then you can build your plans around how to really take advantage of it and scale and grow from that.
Yeah, I think all you guys that kind of echoing this a little bit. We are looking for partners. We are looking for data partnerships that are, one, unique, this is kind of obvious, data in the US is so commoditized, what incremental value is your signal providing, We do a lot of work internationally, of course. My remit is global, so, if you have loyalty card data in Pakistan, we'll probably take a look. That doesn't exist, by the way. Secondly, we think about utility. I mean, we're a huge company. It has to be able to stitch into our constellation of other vendors in our constellation of our internal tools. And kind of like Lance and what Mark, you were saying, I think this last one is kind of focused on usability. Like, are we really, is this really going to unlock anything else? Is this going to get mired down in legal? Is this going to be 1,000 governance reviews? Sure, it's unique and sure it can stitch, but is it really actually anything that we can use long term? So, also, this may sound kind of lame, but it's true. The best partnerships are ones that don't trade CSV files. They trade outcomes. They trade trust. I think company of PepsiCo size, we have so many vendors. I feel like we have very few partners, and we focus on partners that are can show us the secret sauce a little bit, hoping to co-create something with us. And these are the types of folks that we want to work with.
Can I ask about that? With partners with brands, what is the adoption rate of all these different data that you're integrating with and your partners are integrating with? I'm super curious about that.
When you say adoption rate, Lance, what do you mean here?
Well, there's, like you're saying, there are a lot of data and there are a lot of data types, and everything, even a turd sparkles if it's presented the right way, right? And so it's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, we pulled in this new thing. How many of your partners, how many of your brands are actually utilizing that thing or not utilizing that thing? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, they better be using it because that's hopefully my job. Yeah, I think I got the question. We talk to hundreds of people every single year, and I think say we adopt maybe 2. But those 2 that we do adopt is meant to be percolated out through the org. So
you're pretty judicious about what you're accepting.
I think we have to be. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, even from our standpoint, we want to make we call it home buyer data different than mover data in the market, and we want to make that available to other people. So we also have to enrich it in a way that it is valuable, and we have to know, like I said, across our entire journey, where someone is in those particular stages of buying and selling a house. So part of it is figuring out where they are, what are they doing, what are their needs in that whole space. We want that data for our own uses, but we also have tons of partners that want to tap into that and use that data because they have pest control products, or they have insurance or mortgage or home warranty that they're trying to reach those same people, and so they're seeing us as a gateway into those consumers that have needs for products and services in that cycle.
I think it's kind of interesting because, to Christy's point earlier, it's easy to get biased on the data on the input, on the output side, especially if there's too much, right? Because there's only a certain number of hours in the day. There's only a certain amount of brain power that each of the stakeholders have, and so it is interesting to see. Every company, even little bitty one like ours has an ocean of data, and it gets really easy to get cast away in a lot of ways.
So you said the word that I cringe on, which is interesting. If I ever hear someone say, "Oh, your data's interesting," I just like I get hives or something, because like that's the kiss of death with data, is like, "Oh, it's interesting," which basically means I have no idea what to do with this, and it's basically useless to me. So my goal with data is, how do I not make it interesting? How do I make it useful for someone to actually take advantage?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and like I said a minute ago, I think that there isn't an excuse for just about everybody in the space to, whatever side of the fence you sit on, to be integrated with the data in your personal process in one way or another. But I think that the data gatekeepers have a huge responsibility to make it as useful as possible. Otherwise, you make that much more difficult.
And I'll just say one more thing. I mean, even back to what Christy was saying, it's about a cross-organization function. It isn't like just the tech team or just the data science team or the marketing team or the sales team, right? It has to be all combined together with that single vision of like, here's the data that we want to use, here's the data that we want to partner with, here's the data that we then want to share with others, and have that real vision and roadmap. It's not just, oh, cool, we have a bunch of landing pages with forms and we're collecting, name and address. It's got to be more than that, and that takes bigger effort to, one, come up with that vision and strategy, and then two, to execute on it, because it's a journey. It's not something you throw up a couple of landing pages and you're done.
Right, and that's a perfect segue kind of into our final question here. And we've touched on it briefly already, but some other hurdles, or some of the biggest hurdles, and this obviously for the whole group, what are the biggest hurdles to bridging privacy and performance?
I'll start. Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, Kim, because it picks on this natural, maybe perceived tension between privacy and performance. I think, let's lean into it for a second. And I think there is definitely some tension there. I think, obviously data fragmentation is an issue that we all face to some degree, but privacy regimens around the world certainly add to this. I don't know if you guys know about Saudi Arabia's new privacy law. Saudi Arabia is PepsiCo's 9th largest market, which is kind of wild. And Saudi Arabia has a brand new privacy law that talks literally where the data can be stored, like physically the server location. So, these privacy laws literally create distance between other sources of data that we have around the company. So it's kind of crazy. I think, there's the issue of maybe like a measurement trade-off. I think all of these great tools we use, clean rooms, for example, great tools, whether it's like salting or cohorting or just like other guardrails within the clean rooms themselves, they do limit granularity a little bit, right? So it's about finding this level of insight without kind of overstepping a little bit. I think there's tension between speed and control that kind of plays into this dichotomy here, right? My brand teams want real-time decision-making, real-time precision, but literally the privacy rules that we operate globally say no. Obviously, there's all these contractual changes, there's governance checks, but literally it slows the process down. And I think, there's probably another issue. I got to think about this more, so maybe next year we can come back and I'll talk about it again. But I think there's a culture shift that also has to happen internally. Like, I think there's a tendency for folks to rely on things that they have used in the past and know it feels more certain. But I think we have to resist the temptation to declare victory on things that don't matter just because you've done them in the past, just because they feel more certain. And I think that's highly applicable to this privacy v performance conversation as well. Like, at the end of the day, privacy isn't a nice to have, it's literally the law, and it is a must have. So yeah, I think just ending on that, you literally have to do it. So
yeah, I would just add that I think there's this perception that this is easy, and there's like magic bullet vendors out there that will just, I can just take care of this for you. And you can't. I mean, you have to really understand what you're doing. You have to have that vision and plan for it, and then start piecing together, this vendor can do this vendor can do that, this partner can do this, and it's like putting that whole map together. and you have to do it. It's not something that you can just easily outsource to someone else and say, oh, do this for me. It's definitely a journey. It starts with you to build that vision and strategy, and then just start knocking off the different pieces that you can, find a vendor to do one thing for you. Like I'll give you a good example. Like, we chose LiveRamp because they do really well with anonymous cookie-based data for our website, because most of our traffic is anonymous, and we didn't know who those users coming in were, so we used LiveRamp to help us discover that. And then we could start to pull in more first-party direct data on top of that. So that was a strategic decision because they had the right component for us today. And then will they be the right component down the road? I don't know. We'll see how things evolve as we start to pull in more data from more partners and so on. And I'll just also say, be wary of third-party syndicated data sets, because most of that's just modeled. So I used to work for Experian, and nothing wrong with Experian, but having your own first-party data where your consumers tell you what they're thinking or what they're interested in or their income and so on is way more powerful and valuable than relying on third-party syndicated data sets.
I'll take 30 seconds. So I think that your ability to explore into the data, whatever the data may be, is directly correlated with your ability to perform, right? And to find whatever the efficient frontier, whatever the new thing is. And there's like that old cattle ranching quote, good fences or strong fences make good neighbors. And I think that your understanding of just to what degree you can explore, knowing where the edge of that is and making sure that that's solid, allows people to confidently be able to explore into those data. And so I think that is the kind of thing that if you're able to ensure privacy to the nth degree, which makes people feel like if I'm over here, I'm still safe. It's on the edge, but I'm still safe, still ensuring privacy, still ensuring HIPAA compliance, whatever that may be, then you're on solid ground to where privacy and performance are aligned.
That's fantastic. And I want to thank everybody for making my job incredibly easy. Everybody's just so knowledgeable. But Nick, do we have time for a question? One quick question, if we have any in the room.
Great. Over to Tim.
Tim, I see you.
Zach, what's up, man? All right, so quick question for Pepsi. You guys have obviously one of the biggest brands in the world. When you're talking about privacy, do you kind of have an overarching look on how you group all your brands into privacy, or do you break it down to each brand? I really love to hear, because obviously it's worldwide, and there's so much going on, and your job encompasses so many things. I was just wondering how you kind of look at that whole.
I'm going to give the 50,000-foot answer here, Tim, because there is so much variability. I mean, it's all about, something we did across a wide variety of use cases. Privacy certainly has a lot of sub-use cases built in, but we have to tier our brands, right? They often have different, they have different budgets, they have different people, they have different technical know-how, right? And all of that is very siloed inside the brands. So our exercise started with tiering our brands, kind of where they fall on this sophistication journey, cataloging what they have, what they don't have. We also broke it up. We also then broke it up by market. I'll say Cheetos is a fantastically high sophistication brand, but Cheetos Pakistan is not. But Cheetos Brazil is. They're doing all kind of stuff with first-party data, attention. They're leading into a CDP, et cetera. So it really starts with that. We have global principles that allow for that regional flexibility, that regional execution. And I think for a company like ours that is sold in, some staggering stat, 1 billion unique people every single day, almost 1/8 of the world consumes a Pepsi product every single day. Unique people. So it's with that kind of reach, with that kind of scale, having a static set of principles that we upheld or that we want to uphold wouldn't be reasonable. That we do have a lot of kind of local execution with our local team. So kind of like a high-level answer, but yeah.
Well, it's been such a pleasure. And again, just being able to learn from these three has been truly a pleasure. So anybody who
Thanks, Cam.
wants to come later,
Thanks, Cam.
we're the Pina Colada Group.
Thanks,
so.
guys.
We're the Pina Colada Group.